The massive Imperial ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its dark hull reflecting the distant sunlight. It was larger than anything humans had ever built, stretching nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern. Yet, despite its size, the Empire's flagship found itself in an unusual position, being carefully watched. Admiral James Wells stood in the United Earth Defense Forces Command Center, his weathered face illuminated by dozens of holographic displays. His eyes narrowed as he studied the movement patterns of the Imperial fleet. Something wasn't right. While their primary diplomatic vessel approached Earth with all the pomp and ceremony expected of a first contact situation, their support ships were quietly taking up tactical positions throughout the solar system. "They think they're being clever," Wells muttered, zooming in on a cluster of smaller Imperial ships trying to hide in Mars' orbital shadow. Record everything. Earth in 2157 was not the same planet the Empire's initial scouts had observed decades ago. Humanity had spread across their solar system, establishing thriving colonies on Mars and research stations on Europa. Solar-powered satellites harvested energy and beamed it back to Earth, while asteroid mining operations supplied the raw materials needed for continued expansion. To the Empire, this level of development was surprisingly primitive. They had expected to find a planet still struggling with basic spaceflight, easy to intimidate and simple to control. Instead, they found a civilization on the brink of becoming a serious spacefaring species. The Imperial Diplomatic Party made their grand entrance at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Lord Drake, the Empire's ambassador, stepped out of his shuttle with perfect poise, his ornate robes flowing in Earth's breeze. His golden skin and elongated features marked him as clearly alien, yet he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times before. "People of Earth," he announced to the assembled world leaders, his universal translator converting his words into perfect English. "The Galactic Empire extends its greetings and an invitation to join our vast civilization. We offer protection, technology, and membership in the largest peaceful coalition of species in known space." President Richards of the North American Alliance rose to welcome him, her face showing appropriate diplomatic warmth. But in the secure bunker below the UN building, military leaders from around the world were already analyzing the Empire's fleet movements. "Look at their positioning," Wells pointed out to his fellow commanders. "Classic encirclement pattern. They're not here to welcome us. They're here to subdue us." General Martinez from the Latin American Federation nodded grimly. "Their weapons are hot too. Energy readings are consistent with active targeting systems. They expect us to roll over," Wells said, pulling up more tactical displays. "Just like all the other worlds they've peacefully integrated into their empire, but they've never dealt with humans before." The next few hours were a carefully choreographed dance. On the surface, Earth's leaders attended diplomatic functions, exchanged gifts, and listened to Lord Drake's grand speeches about galactic unity. Below ground, humanity's military machinery sprang into action, implementing plans that had been in place since the first signs of alien civilization were detected. Emergency quantum entanglement communicators activated across the solar system, connecting Earth's scattered military forces through channels the Empire couldn't detect. Hidden weapon platforms powered up, their signatures masked by civilian power stations. Deep in the asteroid belt, what appeared to be mining ships began subtle course changes, taking up defensive positions. Wells watched it all from his command center, his expression grim but determined. He had studied the Empire's tactics, analyzed their technology, and come to a simple conclusion. They were dangerously overconfident. They had grown used to encountering species that would submit to their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. But humanity was different. They had done something no other species in the Empire had managed. They had survived themselves. Through world wars, nuclear standoffs, climate disasters, and social upheavals, humans had not only endured but grown stronger. Each conflict had taught them lessons written in blood, lessons about survival, adaptation, and the terrible price of victory. As the first day of diplomatic contacts drew to a close, Wells made his decision. The Empire needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. They needed to learn why threatening humanity would be the biggest mistake in their 10,000-year history. They needed to learn to run. The Grand Reception Hall of the United Nations sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Lord Drake stood among Earth's leaders, enjoying their apparent awe at his tales of imperial achievements. His golden skin reflected the light as he gestured with four-fingered hands, describing the Empire's countless worlds and vast fleets. But Admiral Wells saw something different. From his position near the wall, he noticed how the Imperial ambassador's eyes constantly darted to the exits, how his guards maintained perfect positions for quick response. These weren't the actions of peaceful diplomats. They were the habits of conquerors assessing their prey. Wells checked his watch. In orbit, Imperial ships continued their slow encirclement of Earth, thinking their movements were subtle. They didn't know about the quantum sensors humanity had developed, hidden in what looked like regular weather satellites. It was time. Wells walked across the room, his dress uniform drawing respectful nods from other guests. He had chosen to wear his old combat medals tonight, not for show, but as a reminder of what they represented. Each one told a story of human determination, of survival against impossible odds. "Lord Drake," Wells said, approaching the ambassador with a polite smile, "might I have a moment of your time? There's something I believe you should see." The Imperial ambassador turned, his diplomatic mask perfect, but his secondary eyelids flickering with what Wells recognized as surprise. "Of course, Admiral. I'm always eager to learn more about your fascinating species." Wells led Drake to a quiet corner of the hall, away from the crowds. From his pocket, he pulled out what looked like a simple crystal data storage device, common technology by Imperial standards. "This contains part of our history," Wells said, holding out the crystal. "The part I think you need to understand." Drake took the device with practiced grace. "Your history. We have extensive records of Earth's development. Admiral, our observation posts have been watching your world for quite some time." "No," Wells said quietly. "You have records of our achievements, our buildings, our technology. This is different. This is what we did to ourselves." The crystal glowed softly as Drake held it up to the light. His expression changed subtly as his implants began reading the data. Confusion, then disbelief, then something close to horror. The crystal contained carefully selected footage from humanity's most devastating conflicts. The trenches of World War I, where humans first married industrial efficiency with warfare. The firebombing of cities in World War II, showing humanity's willingness to destroy everything rather than submit. Nuclear explosions and their aftermath, proving humans would risk their own extinction in pursuit of victory. But it wasn't just the destruction. The crystal showed how humans adapted, how they innovated under pressure, how each war bred new technologies, new tactics, new ways of thinking, how humanity took the lessons learned in blood and used them to become stronger. This cannot be real," Drake whispered, his diplomatic poise cracking for the first time. "No species could survive this level of conflict. The psychological damage alone." "We didn't just survive it," Wells said. "We learned from it. We got better at it. Every war taught us something new about survival, about victory, about ourselves." Wells stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "Your empire has never lost a war because you've never fought anyone who really knew how to fight. You've conquered peaceful worlds, technological worlds, worlds that submitted because they couldn't imagine the alternative." The crystal showed more recent footage. Orbital defense platforms disguised as communications satellites, asteroid mining ships that could quickly convert to warships, fusion reactors that could double as weapon cores. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. "But we're different," Wells continued. "We know war. We've lived it, breathed it, nearly died from it. And we survived. Do you understand what that means, Lord Drake?" The ambassador's hands were trembling slightly now. The crystal's display showed the final image. Earth's combined military forces, hidden but ready, already in position to counter the Empire's encirclement. "This is what we did to ourselves," Wells said, his voice deadly calm. "Imagine what we'll do to you if you force our hand. Run." Drake stared at the crystal for a long moment, his species equivalent of sweat beginning to form on his brow. Without a word, he turned and walked quickly toward his guards, all pretense of diplomatic leisure forgotten. Wells watched him go, then touched his concealed communicator. "All units maintain alert status. Let's see if they're smart enough to listen." In the sky above, humanity's hidden defenses tracked every Imperial ship, weapons primed but not yet revealed. The next few hours would determine whether the Empire had just avoided its first real war, or its last. Lord Drake sat in his private chamber aboard the Imperial flagship, watching the data crystal's contents for the 7th time. His golden skin had turned pale, and his hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "Run it again," he ordered the ship's computer. "Focus on the section about their nuclear warfare period." The holographic display filled the room with images of mushroom clouds rising over cities, of the aftermath of atomic destruction, and of the rapid rebuilding that followed. What terrified Drake wasn't just the destruction. It was how quickly humans had recovered and adapted. "Computer, compare human military advancement rates to all known species in the Imperial database." Numbers and graphs appeared in the air. The computer's neutral voice reported, "Human military technology advanced more in the 6 years of their World War II than most species achieve in 2 centuries. Their rate of adaptation during conflict exceeds all known patterns." Drake pressed a button on his desk. "Send for military analyst First Class Wilson." Wilson arrived quickly. He was from one of the Empire's most strategic species, with a brain specifically evolved for pattern recognition and tactical analysis. His gray skin and large eyes marked him as different from Drake's golden-skinned race, but they shared the same growing concern about Earth. "You've reviewed the data?" Drake asked. "Yes, my lord. It's troubling." Wilson pulled up his own set of holographic displays. "Most species we encounter develop their technology in a linear fashion. They discover spaceflight, then energy weapons, then shield technology, and so on. But humans," he gestured at a chaotic graph, "they jump around. They developed nuclear weapons before they had reliable computers. They mastered orbital mechanics while still burning fossil fuels. They created stealth technology before they had energy shields. It's completely backward by our standards." "And in war," Drake prompted. Wilson's expression grew even more serious. "In war, they transform. Every major conflict in their history shows the same pattern. They start with one level of technology and end with something completely different. They don't just adapt, they evolve." The room's displays showed footage from Earth's more recent military exercises, what looked like simple fishing boats suddenly revealing advanced weapon systems, cargo ships with hidden missile launchers, civilian satellites that could quickly convert to weapon platforms. "They're hiding their true capabilities," Wilson said. "These humans, they've been preparing for interstellar war since before they knew we existed. They took every lesson from their past conflicts and built redundancies, fallback positions, hidden advantages." Drake stood and walked to the window, looking out at the blue-green planet below. "Run a standard invasion simulation." Wilson hesitated. "My lord, we've already run it 20 times. Run it again." Wilson nodded and input the commands. The holographic display showed a traditional Imperial invasion force against Earth's known defenses. At first, the Empire's superior technology gave them the advantage. But then, "Watch," Wilson said grimly. "This is where it all goes wrong." In the simulation, humanity's hidden weapons activated. Their seemingly primitive nuclear weapons had been modified in ways the Empire's shields couldn't handle. Their mining ships revealed themselves as armed vessels. But worst of all, they adapted. Each Imperial tactic was countered, learned from, and improved upon. By the third day of simulated combat, Wilson explained, they're using our own technology against us. By the fifth day, they've developed counters to systems they didn't even know existed at the start of the battle. By the seventh day, the simulation showed the Empire's invasion force in ruins, and human ships pushing outward, learning, adapting, and growing stronger with each engagement. They don't fight like any species we've encountered, Wilson concluded. They don't try to match us symmetrically. They look for weaknesses, create new solutions, and they seem to actually improve under pressure. It defies all military logic. Drake turned from the window. Send word to the Imperial capital. Mark this report as highest priority. Humanity is not a species we can simply conquer and absorb. They're not primitive. They're something entirely different, something that has learned to thrive on conflict itself. He looked one more time at the peaceful-looking planet below. And whatever we do next, we must remember what their admiral told me. They'd done worse to themselves than we could ever do to them. And they survived it all. In orbit around Earth, Imperial ships maintained their positions, but now their crews watched the seemingly primitive human vessels with new eyes, wondering what other surprises this strange, battle-forged species had hidden away, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true strength. The Imperial War Council chamber hummed with tension. 12 of the Empire's highest-ranking military commanders sat around a massive holographic table, their different species and colors reflecting the Empire's vast reach. At the head of the table, High Commander Rex, his scales showing age and experience, studied the detailed reports about Earth. "Let's hear the arguments," Rex said, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of Imperial military tradition. "Commander Stone, you speak first." Commander Stone, young and ambitious, stood up. Like many younger officers, his cybernetic enhancements glowed softly in the dim light. "The solution is simple. We strike now with overwhelming force. Yes, humans are unusual, but they're still centuries behind us in technology." He waved his hand, and the hologram showed the Empire's massive fleet. "We have 10,000 ships. They have barely reached Mars. This shouldn't even be a discussion." Lord Drake, sitting quietly in the corner, noticed how the older commanders exchanged knowing looks. They had read the full history. They understood what the younger ones didn't. Admiral Green, one of the oldest members, spoke next. "Commander Stone, tell me, have you studied the humans' World War IA? A primitive conflict with chemical engines and basic explosives." Stone dismissed. "Hardly relevant." "Wrong," Green said sharply. "In just 6 years, they went from fabric-covered biplanes to jet engines, from basic radio to radar, from simple code to complex computers. Tell me, Commander, how fast does the Empire usually develop new technology?" Stone shifted uncomfortably. "The standard development cycle is 15 to 20 years. "Exactly." Green stood up, his aged frame still commanding respect. "These humans developed more in 6 years of war than we do in decades of peace, and that was when they were fighting themselves. What do you think they'll do when we give them access to our technology through combat?" The hologram changed to show Earth's hidden military preparations, weapons disguised as civilian technology, defense systems buried in peaceful installations, an entire parallel military infrastructure, hidden but ready. "They're paranoid," Stone argued. "They see threats everywhere." "They're prepared," corrected Admiral Green. "They built their entire civilization expecting someone like us to arrive. Every piece of their technology can serve dual purposes. Their civilian ships can become warships. Their communication satellites are weapon platforms. Even their children's entertainment includes scenarios about fighting alien invaders." Lord Drake finally spoke up. "There's something else." He played the footage from his meeting with Admiral Wells. The room fell silent as they watched the human admiral's calm warning. High Commander Rex leaned forward. "Analysis suggests this was not a bluff. Earth has been preparing for interstellar war since before they split the atom. They turned their own brutal history into a tactical advantage. The hologram showed simulations of various invasion scenarios. In every one, the initial Imperial success was followed by rapid human adaptation and devastating counterattacks. They're not just good at fighting, Rex continued. They're good at learning while fighting. Each engagement makes them stronger. Our standard tactics won't work because they don't think like standard opponents. Commander Stone tried one last time, but surely our numbers would only give them more opportunities to learn. Green interrupted. More of our technology to capture and reverse engineer. More tactics to analyze and counter. We would be teaching them how to defeat us. High Commander Rex raised his hand for silence. The decision before us is clear. We can either accept Earth as an independent power, or we can start a war that our simulations suggest we cannot win. At least, not at a price the Empire is willing to pay. The room erupted in argument. Younger officers pushed for immediate action, while veterans counseled caution. The debate raged until Rex slammed his hand on the table. Enough. I have made my decision. He looked around the room, meeting each commander's eyes. We will withdraw our forces from the Sol system. Earth will be classified as a restricted zone. No military action is to be taken without direct Imperial authorization. Commander Stone started to protest, but Rex cut him off. This is not a surrender. This is wisdom. The humans have given us a chance to avoid what could become the bloodiest war in Imperial history. We would be fools not to take it. As the commanders filed out, Lord Drake stayed behind. There's one more thing, sir. Something in their historical records that should concern us. What's that? Every time humans face a powerful enemy, they don't just fight. They learn. They adapt. They grow stronger. Drake paused. By threatening them, we may have just created exactly what we feared. A new power that knows how to challenge the Empire. High Commander Rex nodded grimly. Then let us hope they remember that we chose to listen to their warning. And run. Commander Stone sat in his command chair, stewing in anger. The Empire's decision to withdraw from Earth felt like a personal insult. His ship, the Imperial destroyer Swift Justice, hung at the edge of Mars' orbit, preparing to leave the solar system with the rest of the fleet. These humans need to learn their place, he muttered, watching the red planet's surface where human colonies glowed in the darkness. A plan formed in his mind. One last lesson before departure. Weapons officer, target the largest human settlement on Mars. Maximum power. His crew hesitated but followed orders. Stone smiled. Let's show them what real Imperial power looks like. The massive energy beam lanced out from his ship, straight toward the Mars colony. But something unexpected happened. In the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, Admiral Wells watched the attack unfold with cold calm. They took the bait, he said quietly. Initiate Operation Mirror. The beam hit what looked like a civilian shield dome over the Mars colony. Instead of destroying it, the energy seemed to ripple and twist. Then, to the Empire's shock, it reflected back, amplified. Stone barely had time to shout, "Impossible," before his ship's shields buckled under their own redirected energy. The Swift Justice lost power, drifting helplessly in space. Wells pressed a button on his command console. "This is Admiral Wells to all Imperial forces. Your Commander Stone just violated your own withdrawal orders. Under normal circumstances, this would mean war." He paused, letting the tension build. "However, we are feeling generous. You have 1 hour to collect your damaged ship and leave our solar system. If you comply, we will consider this incident closed." On the Imperial flagship, Lord Drake watched in horror as human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the asteroid belt. They weren't the primitive vessels the Empire had observed. These were warships, disguised as mining craft, their designs unlike anything the Empire had seen. "How long have they had these?" his tactical officer whispered. The whole time, Drake realized. Everything we've seen was a facade. Their civilian ships, their colonies, their satellites, all of it built to hide their true capabilities. The humans demonstrated their point with surgical precision. A small fleet of Earth ships surrounded Stone's disabled vessel. Their weapons remained powered down. They didn't need to shoot. The message was clear. We could destroy you, but we're choosing not to. In the Empire's Central Command, High Commander Rex received the reports with growing concern. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had done it without revealing the full extent of their capabilities. The energy reflection technology alone was centuries ahead of Imperial science. Analysis, he demanded. How did they do it? His scientists worked frantically. The shield technology appears to be based on principles we've never encountered. They're not just blocking energy. They're redirecting and amplifying it. It's elegant. Elegant? Rex asked. Yes, sir. They took basic physics principles and applied them in ways we never considered. It's not more advanced technology. It's completely different thinking. Admiral Wells watched the Imperial fleet's confusion with grim satisfaction. They still didn't understand. Humans hadn't tried to match the Empire's technology. They'd developed countermeasures instead. Why build massive energy weapons when you could turn an enemy's own power against them? The Mars colony dropped its civilian disguise, revealing a heavily fortified military base. Similar transformations happened across the solar system as humanity's hidden defenses showed themselves briefly before disappearing again behind careful camouflage. In his damaged ship, Commander Stone watched through failing view screens as human vessels escorted him back to the Imperial fleet. Their design was strange. No wasted space, no decorative elements, just pure functionality. These were ships built by people who understood war wasn't about looking impressive. It was about survival. Final warning. Wells' voice came through on all frequencies. The next uninvited Imperial ship that enters our space will not receive such gentle treatment. We've shown you a fraction of what we can do. Don't make us show you the rest. Lord Drake quickly organized the fleet's withdrawal. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, he looked one last time at the seemingly peaceful solar system behind them. Now he understood why humans had warned them to run. They hadn't been threatening the Empire. They had been trying to save it from making a terrible mistake. As the Imperial fleet vanished into hyperspace, Earth's defenses returned to their hiding places. Humanity had revealed enough to make their point, but not enough to show their full hand. They had learned that lesson well over centuries of warfare. Always keep something in reserve. The Mars colony resumed its civilian appearance, its powerful weapons disappearing behind holographic displays of atmospheric processors and hydroponic farms. Everything returned to normal, except now the Empire knew. Humans didn't just prepare for war. They mastered it. The Imperial capital buzzed with activity. In the Great Hall of Knowledge, the Empire's best minds gathered to understand what they had discovered about humanity. The massive chamber, filled with holographic displays, showed everything they had learned about Earth's true nature. Lord Drake stood before the Imperial Science Council, his report causing waves of concern among the gathered aliens of different species. We were wrong about humans from the start, he explained. We thought their scattered technology showed weakness. Instead, it was perfect camouflage. The main display showed Earth's quantum communication network, hidden in what the Empire had dismissed as background radiation. They weren't primitive, Drake continued. They were invisible. Every piece of primitive technology served multiple purposes. Chief Scientist Render, his crystalline form reflecting light across the chamber, moved forward. Show us their adaptation patterns again. The display changed to show how humans had modified their technology after just brief exposure to Imperial ships. In mere days, they had developed countermeasures to systems they had never seen before. Impossible, one scientist muttered. No species can reverse engineer technology that quickly. They don't reverse engineer, Render corrected. They observe, adapt, and innovate. Look at their shield technology. They didn't copy our energy shields. They created something entirely different that works better against our weapons. In another part of the capital, High Commander Rex met with the Imperial Security Council. The mood was grim as they reviewed footage of Earth's hidden fleet revealing itself. Those ships, Rex pointed at the display, were disguised as mining vessels. But look closer. The image zoomed in, showing details of the human vessels. No wasted space. No decorative elements. Pure function. They've been building warships all along, hiding them in plain sight. How long? One council member asked. Since they detected our first probe, Rex answered. They knew we were coming. Every satellite, every colony, every spacecraft they built had dual purposes. Their entire civilization was prepared for us. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Wells led a different kind of meeting. In the underground command center, he showed Earth's leaders what they had learned about the Empire. Their technology is advanced, Wells explained, but predictable. They haven't fought a real war in thousands of years. Their weapons are powerful but inflexible. Their tactics are by the book, a book we now have. The room's displays showed analysis of Imperial ship movements during the brief confrontation. They move like a peacetime fleet, one general observed. No randomization in their patterns. No deception in their formations. Exactly, Wells agreed. They've forgotten the art of war. They remember the mechanics, but not the mindset. They know how to conquer, but not how to fight. In orbit, Earth's hidden satellites continued gathering data. What looked like simple weather monitoring stations carried advanced sensors, building a complete picture of Imperial technology. Every moment the Empire had spent near Earth had been a learning opportunity. The quantum communication network hummed silently, invisible to Imperial sensors. Human colonies across the solar system shared data, refined strategies, and improved their defenses. The brief show of force against Commander Stone had been carefully calculated, enough to make a point, but not enough to reveal their full capabilities. Back in the Imperial capital, Lord Drake made his final point to the gathered councils. We didn't just underestimate their technology, he said. We underestimated their mindset. Look at their history again. The display showed centuries of human conflict, innovation, and adaptation. Every war taught them something. Every battle made them stronger. They took the worst experiences in their history and turned them into advantages. But surely, one council member argued, no species would choose to remain militarized after achieving peace. Drake shook his head. That's what we've failed to understand. They didn't remain militarized. They integrated readiness into every aspect of their civilization. Their peaceful achievements hide military potential. Their civilian technology can be converted to military use. Everything serves multiple purposes. In the silence that followed, Chief Scientist Render spoke quietly. They've been fighting wars since before they mastered fire. Each conflict forced them to innovate, adapt, and overcome. They didn't just survive their violent history. They learned from it. High Commander Rex nodded grimly. And now they've learned about us. Every moment we spent near Earth was a chance for them to study our technology, analyze our tactics, and prepare countermeasures. So what do we do? Someone asked. Rex looked at the image of Earth, peaceful but now understood to be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. We do what they warned us to do. We run. 5 years had passed since the confrontation in Earth's solar system. The Imperial diplomatic ship approached Earth's orbit, this time with full transparency and proper clearance. Lord Drake stood on the bridge, noting how much had changed. Where before they had seen only scattered colonies and primitive satellites, now Earth openly displayed its capabilities. Defense platforms no longer hid behind civilian disguises. Ships of war patrolled openly, their designs unlike anything in the Empire's fleet, smaller, more efficient, and far more dangerous. They're not hiding anymore, Drake said to his aide. They don't need to. Admiral Wells met Drake's shuttle in the same UN building where they had first exchanged warnings 5 years ago. The room was different now, hardened against attacks, its seemingly decorative elements concealing advanced defense systems. Welcome back to Earth, Lord Drake, Wells said, his face showing the same calm confidence as before. I trust this visit will go better than the last one." Drake nodded, placing a ceremonial data crystal on the table between them. "I bring a formal apology from the Empire and recognition of Earth's complete independence. We also wish to establish proper diplomatic relations as equals." Wells picked up the crystal, but Drake knew the humans had probably scanned and analyzed its contents before his shuttle even landed. They had learned never to take things at face value. "The Empire has changed its protocols," Drake continued. "When our scouts find a world where the species has survived multiple global conflicts, we no longer attempt contact. We mark the system as restricted and move on." "Because of us?" Wells asked, though he knew the answer. "Because you taught us something important," Drake replied. "Advanced technology doesn't make a species strong. Survival does. Experience does. The will to endure does." In orbit, Earth's defense fleet conducted what looked like routine patrols, but Drake noticed how they maintained perfect firing positions on his ship at all times. They hadn't grown complacent with peace, another lesson from their history. "The Empire has ruled space for 10,000 years, Drake said, "but we had forgotten what it means to face a true rival. Someone who doesn't just fight but learns, adapts, evolves." Wells gestured to a window overlooking New York. "We never wanted war, Lord Drake. Everything you saw, our hidden fleets, our defensive preparations, our technological camouflage, it was all to prevent conflict, not start it. By being so strong that war would be foolish, Drake understood. Yes, we've studied your doctrine of peace through strength, another concept we had forgotten." The meeting continued, discussing trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. But both men knew the real message had already been sent. Humanity wouldn't join the Empire. They would walk among the stars as equals. Later, in Earth's military command center, Wells reviewed the defense grid updates with his staff. The Empire's new respect hadn't made them lower their guard. If anything, they were stronger now. "They're still watching us," Wells noted, looking at sensor readings from the edge of the solar system. "Trying to understand." His tactical officer nodded. "They still don't quite get it, do they? Why we build the way we do. Why we plan the way we do." "They never had to," Wells replied. "The Empire grew through overwhelming force. They never faced extinction, never had to adapt or die, never learned what humanity learned the hard way." In the imperial capital, the records of Earth were sealed with a new classification. "Approach with extreme caution." The official history now included a note that would be studied by imperial commanders for generations. "In the Empire's 10,000-year history, we encountered many species. Some were peaceful, some were violent, some were primitive, some were advanced. But humans were different. They had done something no other species had managed. They had turned their violent history into wisdom. Every war taught them to adapt. Every conflict forced them to innovate. Every battle made them stronger. When we found them, we thought they were primitive because they hid their true strength. We were wrong. They weren't primitive. They were prepared. They had learned the hardest lessons any species can learn: how to survive themselves, how to turn weakness into strength, how to hide power behind peace, and most importantly, they learned when to show mercy to a potential enemy. They warned us to run. We were wise enough to listen. Remember their warning. Remember their strength. And remember that somewhere out there, humanity is watching, learning, and growing stronger. Because that's what humans do best. They learn, they adapt, and they survive." The Empire had finally understood the truth. They hadn't avoided a war with humanity. Humanity had avoided a war with them.